Well, hello again, and welcome to the Big Show, hosted by me, Jimmy Smith. Alongside of me is my co-host and color commentator, Dwayne Ward. What's
Hi,
up, buddy?
everybody.
How are you?
Living La Vida Loca. We
What
shared.
does that even mean? What does that mean?
You know what? I'm a 70s, 80s kid, and that was when that Ricky Martin
Yeah.
song came out, and Living La Vida Loca. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's that whole "it is what it is." All those guy catchphrases that we all use. Pretty much it.
Well,
No, I
the
was going to say I'm having a great week. We shared off screen that I am finally below 200 pounds. I am in the 199 range. Yeah. So health is looking good.
And for all of you out there, if you guys have been a long watcher of the podcast, about 2 years ago, roughly, is when we started doing this podcast, and Dwayne's heaviest was 270.
Yeah, 270.
And now you're at 199.
199.2. So
Point two.
Yeah, the 0.2 is important. And as we know, length and size, every little bit we can get. But and if you look at the older shows, you can see like my face going from here to here. Now it's like an oblong kind of thing there. So yeah, I'm happy again. Hats off to of course my lovely wife Brandy for encouraging me, and big thanks to you and Eric, because you guys and your special brand of toxic masculinity got me to this point. I mean, I would have still been dying on ding dongs and ho-hos had you guys not kicked my ass and said, dude, get off your fat ass and do something. I know, 3 fat people and you're 5 of them.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway.
I radiate toxic masculinity. Apparently it some got into you, and look at the change. 70
Look what happened. And I feel great. This is just amazing. Another 10 pounds to go, and then I'm there.
That's great. Well, that's what this podcast really is all about. I mean, the Big Show is a podcast where, we discuss a lot of things like that. Men's health, masculinity, everyday life advice, and the hard truth about dating, and just basically what makes a man, and being strong and healthy is one way that men really need to kind of portray in order to be the leader of their household. And so, on behalf of everyone that watches the Big Show, we're all really proud of you, Dwayne. You put the work in. So congratulations, dude. I'm really proud of you.
Yeah. And it's one of those that can be done. Anybody can do it. The stuff that you teach, a lot of it's just pushing yourself away from the table, but the getting accountability partners and people involved, and just doing a guy thing, putting your nose down and getting it done. That's what got me there. And
it's true, man.
I don't want to go back. Oh, I mean, another thing, and this may, appeal or may hit some other people, but the last 2 years, there's way too much information, I'm sure, but the last 2 years, I used a CPAP machine because I stopped breathing 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever times a night, and everyone was getting really concerned. About a month and a half ago, I packed it up. I don't need one anymore. So
really?
No more Darth Vader. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So me and Brady got to find some new ways to, get it exciting in the sack, but we'll find something. But Darth Vader, Star Wars, we can't do it anymore. No more use the Force, Luke. So anyway, sorry.
At least you're still swinging your lightsaber. That's all that matters.
Oh yes. Come to the dark side.
Well, for everybody out there, forgive me. I'm a little under the weather, sore throat today, so I'm gonna push my way through it. But still wanted to do a show with my good buddy and the new lean and mean Dwayne Ward. But today, guys, what we're gonna do is we're gonna tackle an interesting topic. We're gonna tackle that pesky thing that we hate to do and often try to avoid. And for all the men listening, we know what that pesky thing and that is conversation. Now, of course, we all know as men that conversation is an intricate way of life. We understand that we can't avoid it. But as a man, we all know far too well what I'm talking about, because when it comes to conversation, or at least having to enter into conversation where she starts out with, hey, we need to talk.
Oh,
That leads down a road where we're going to be painted as the side that's probably wrong. And it's more than likely not going to be a very pleasurable conversation.
yeah.
And the thing is men, we're not often wrong. We're not. When
At
leading
the
a
end of the day,
household, you know, when leading a household and raising children, it's really up to the men, us, to get the family on our program and following
mhm,
our direction. Um, Sounds straightforward, but as men, we
yeah,
know how difficult it is to change the minds of those that are set in their ways of thinking. And that's the challenge for a lot of guys is they're expected to be leaders of the household. They're expected to take on the responsibility of the tough jobs. They're
right,
expected to bring the discipline and the structure. But the challenge with men is that the children and or sometimes the spouse, the wife, they're not always jumping at the want to get on our program or follow
yeah,
our lead. And
right,
so we have to find good ways of communicating and good ways of getting our points across without seeming like an authoritative figure in the household.
right,
And so the number one question I get asked for when I talk to men is it's always usually about women. But a good close second, maybe third, I don't know. Definitely rounds the top three though, is Jim, what should I say if this? What should I do in this scenario? It's always a
right,
conversation, a communication breakdown. And I'm pretty decent at communication, and people come to me for advice, whether that's sales training or whether that's just relationship advice, where they have to have a conversation and they're not sure how to articulate it. And I don't know, God's blessed me, I guess, with at least a little bit of a natural ability to sound pretty articulate. And the challenge is not everyone can really take what I say and then convey it to a conversation that they're going to have 4 days later. But there are tips and tactics, though, that we can do as men or even women when dealing with someone who has a completely different way of thinking about something,
right,
whether that's dealing with your ex-husband or ex-wife, whether that's dealing with your children, whether that's dealing with your boss or a coworker, a peer, whether that's dealing with the family that you're going to have to deal with in Thanksgiving dinner coming up in a few weeks.
right,
People are going to be set in their ways. And so how do you change the minds of people who are already under the conclusion that they're right and you're not, that they know best and you don't?
right,
Well, there is research backed data that we can look towards that psychiatrists and professors alike have come to understand or seem to find that works. And I'm going to share with you guys 6 good tips today on how to basically change the minds of people and what you're doing wrong and why you're having a hard time doing it. There's a author named Eric Barker, and he's the author of a blog called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. I've spoke about him before in the past, and he actually wrote a blog about this and spoke about this exact very topic. And what Eric had to say was, he says, man, if you could only tie up that special someone to a chair and force them to listen, or make them read that one thing that would finally change their stubborn mind, then they finally see the light. But we know it's never going
yeah,
to happen. Right. We know it's never going to happen. And even if that whole it's illegal to kidnap and restrain people wasn't part of the issue, the truth is that it still wouldn't work. There's just no guarantees when it comes to changing people's mind. So what does work most often? Well, back in the 70s, the 1970s, Portland State University psychology professor Dr. Frank Wesley looked into why some U.S. prisoners of war defected to North Korea during the Korean War. And it wasn't because they were tortured, it was because they were shown kindness.
Hmm.
And that's what baffled the professor. You see, his research showed that virtually all of the defectors came from a single U.S. training camp. And as part of their training, those soldiers had been taught that the North Koreans were cruel, heartless barbarians that despised the United States and single-mindedly sought after the US's destruction. But when those POWs were shown kindness by their captors, the initial indoctrination started to unravel. They became far more likely to defect than the POWs who either hadn't been told anything about North Koreans or had been giving a more neutral accounts of them. Unexpected kindness, not restraints, is what changes minds. But having a reasonable discussion these days seems almost impossible. In today's hyper social media world, it's just becoming more and more difficult to change the minds of people. They seem very closed-minded, in fact. The world is so increasingly polarized that no furniture being broken passes for a civil conversation. Everyone is so sure that they're right that they end up doing everything wrong. And we need to have more discussions where no one is demonized, no one's shamed, and both sides are open to changing their minds.
Right.
And it's not only is it going to be more pleasant if we can figure that out, but that harsh stuff that we give people or people give us back, it just really doesn't work. It just makes enemies more vicious. And yes, some topics will always be controversial, and yes, things won't always go smoothly, but they don't have to go badly.
Right.
Now, it would be great if someone had taken the time to pull all the insights from peer-reviewed research, professional negotiations, cult exiting, and applied, all that information into one book. But, well, actually, you know what? Someone has. Someone actually has. There's a book by a man named Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay. And those two men have written an excellent book entitled How to Have Impossible Conversations. And it would definitely make my best of 2022 list, right behind David Epstein's Range. But frankly, this book has actually taught me a great deal about the errors that I personally make. In short, it's packed full of really good, useful information and great, fresh ideas. But we're first going to quickly cover a lot of fundamentals so we can get to the cool new toys. This first section is going to be a bit of a lightning round, and some of it might sound obvious to you guys, but if you neglect it, none of the subsequent ideas will work. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. The first thing you want to do is you want to be a partner and not an adversary. When you're dealing with people and you're trying to change their minds, most of us will actually go into that conversation with an unconscious war metaphor in our heads where someone wins and someone has to lose, a zero sum. But that rarely ever convinces anyone of anything. And we have to shift our goal of winning to a goal of understanding. Now, the question really is how does that lead people to changing their minds? Well, to quickly summarize the grand strategy here, it would be nice and respectful, listen, understand, and instill a little doubt. You need rapport when dealing with this type of issue, though. Rapport is like a fancy way of saying be nice, be respectful. But if not nice, if you're not nice, honestly, all the evidence in the world won't help you.
It's like 99% of the internet, basically.
Right.
Okay.
And that's why they do it. Because everyone throws daggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to find common ground. Don't call the other person out except for the most extreme circumstances or the most extreme infractions. And always give the people the opportunity to be wrong safely and with respect. An example, saying I told you so or shaming someone is a take no prisoners attitude. And what do people do when they think you take no prisoners? They don't surrender.
Right.
They fight to the death.
Right. Hill to die on.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can't control their behavior, but you can control yours. And just because they behave badly doesn't mean you doing the same will make this any better. So you have to model the behavior you'd like to see in them. And a lot of times it's often contagious. And even if it's not, your behavior getting worse will certainly not lead to anything that's going to help you. You also want to focus on listening and make sure that they know that you're listening. You can say a simple "I hear you" to acknowledge their words without, necessarily agreeing with them. Make a quote, "How in the world could anyone believe that?" A question that you ask yourself curiously, not a rhetorical question you ask yourself while shaking your head. And a big, big, big issue these days is intentions. And research shows you probably assume theirs is far worse than it really is. Exceedingly few people's primary goal is hurting others. For the most part, no one's really trying to hurt other people. We may have bad evidence. We might have poor reasoning or different, but still noble values. But they're rarely evil. You know what it feels like when someone assumes that you're a horrible person or you're completely stupid? A lot of us know how that feels.
Never happened.
You instantly dislike them. And they have a 0.0 chance of changing your mind after you think that they feel that way about you. Yeah. You have to help others see your side. And by taking the same token, do your best to see where they're coming from. Remember, both of you could be wrong.
It's always a possibility.
It's okay to end a conversation. Things really go south when you forget that this is even an option. Don't lose a friendship over a debate. And the single most effective way to have a productive argument on Twitter or Facebook is by not having arguments on Twitter or Facebook.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And how many times, Dwayne, out of all these years, have you been able to change someone's mind on Twitter and Facebook?
Never. They usually dig in or say they don't want to talk about it. And obviously all of my favorite topics I've tried to convince, and I was being nice, cordial, and they're just being rude as can be. And I've had them say, I won't read this information because the font I don't like the font. I mean, I've had that excuse, and that's that level of cognitive dissonance that they're not going to change their minds, and it's pointless. And I'm trying to think back of, the 15, 20 years or so that I've been on Facebook, at least over the internet, have I ever changed someone's mind? I don't think I ever have, especially on the hot topics. I mean, the research, the data, all the information's on my side, but they still hold on to their wrong belief. And I've tried a bunch of different tactics. I'm more of a tactic person because I'm trying to figure out how to change minds. I try to use the stone in the shoe way of thinking. I tried to empathize. I've tried all the different things, but on social media, it's just rare, if ever, that you can get someone to, because once I got that mental real estate built up on it, they're not going to change. There's, one topic, I'm trying to think, deletion of a small person that, is big. And I've tried everything. I used to think like you. I thought that. Then I did some research. And then I have this actually on my Pissed Off Parent page on a unpublished. It's a direct link. I have just miles of data that show a particular position, and people, they'll either block you, don't want to read it, whatever. People just they've got their mental real estate, and they're not wanting to change. Is that cognitive dissonance? I like to use the Dunning-Kruger effect because you have people that think they're smart and they're at the very beginning of the curve. They should be more at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the point you're bringing up, it makes sense. You want to be nice, you want to be whatever, but it's very anti Facebook and YouTube and Twitch and all that, because everyone likes to be rude because they're chair warriors. The things that get told to me, I'm trying to imagine them saying it to my face. These people would never say it to your face, but they're behind a keyboard. They're keyboard warrior, and they can say and do whatever they want and get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely truth to that. And that's why it's not even worth engaging in conversations with that are important conversations like politics or, you
Mm.
know, some of the other tougher conversations to have.
Social issues
Yeah,
of the day. Yeah.
policies, whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
because there's just not enough time to do the back and forth, and no one's going to really play nice in this
Right.
arena. They just want to be heard, and then they want no one to even comment on
Right.
to rebuttal them. They just want to get their likes, if you will. I've
Mhm.
noticed though that when talking about tough conversations, and this is an election year, so over the next couple months, we're going to be a lot of us are going to be challenged with having these tough conversations, especially this holiday season with family
Right.
members who don't align with your political ideology, and it can get really bad and ugly really fast.
Oh yeah.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast is because I want to share some of my best practice on how to handle people whenever they are dead set and dug their heels in, and they seemingly can't be changed. Their minds can't be changed, and the truth is that some of their minds cannot be changed. But a
Right.
lot of people, they really are good people. They just don't understand. They don't have the data, they don't have the knowledge, or they've been told how to feel about a certain topic.
Right.
So using some of the things I'm going to teach you guys today, you can actually exploit that a little bit by placing doubt in their mind, and then doing it in a nice way. Remember that changing positions on deeply held values can take time,
Mhm. Oh yeah.
and it rarely ever changes with an all of
On
a
a-
sudden eureka moment.
yeah, one conversation, 5 minutes. That never happens. That's why I employed the stone in the shoe. Give them something to chew on. It bugs them for a while. The cognitive dissonance takes effect, and then slowly over time, they may start coming off of that position. I've had
Yeah,
success there, but yeah, they make a comment, you make a comment, and they go, "Oh, I never thought about it that way," and then I'm changing tomorrow. That
yeah.
doesn't happen.
And then when you push too hard, you end up pushing them away.
Well, they're
You
looking
know,
for a reason. They want to make it personal. They want to have a reason to block you, and then say, "Wow, that guy's a jerk," and then they can continue on their merry way.
yeah,
That happens a
yeah.
lot.
And a good friend of mine in the comments section, her and I have had many political conversations, many of them. Her and
Mhm.
I, we're not on polar opposites, but we are on different spectrums. She leans one way, and I lean the other way. She has her feelings on why she leans that way, and although I don't always agree with what Alicia thinks, I can understand why she thinks that way. And I know Alicia, and she is a very good person. And she has a couple great kids and an awesome dog, um, and she has her reasons for feeling that way politically, and a lot of it has to do with protection of maybe her children and protection of values and things like that.
Mhm.
And you know, my personal experience handling the issue of politics, since Alicia popped up, is I've noticed that whenever I do that on social media, it rarely ever goes well. But whenever I
Right.
talk about these things in person, the other person usually will give you respect as you give them respect. If you assuming you give them respect,
Right.
you can sometimes not always, but sometimes you actually know these people and you understand that they really do mean well,
Right.
and they're not evil, right? Yeah, I didn't want to put your dirty laundry out there. It's not that it's dirty laundry, but your personal stuff. But yeah, she has a son who's gay,
Mhm.
and so some of the values and the way that she leans politically has to do with protection of gay rights and um, making sure that they're not being victims of violence and hate crimes and things of that nature. Completely understandable. Completely understandable.
We all want to protect our kids. Yeah.
Sure, and that's what she's doing, right?
Yeah.
My job was not ever to really change someone's mind, but just I guess to kind of show that the information that they were receiving was biased information and not exactly accurate.
Right.
And my political side does the same damn thing.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of people on the politics, since we're talking about politics, on both sides of the bird, right? Both wings, right wing, left wing, independents. Over this last, especially 8 years, a lot of people are just not tuning in to the MSNBC, CNN on this side, or the
Right.
Fox News and
Oh, yeah.
whoever else, because they're realizing that this is just a big, huge corporate machine that does nothing but want to make money. And how do you make money? With views. And how do you get people to watch?
Clickbait. Yeah.
You got to get people heated up. There has to be something going on.
Right.
And so I think now more than ever, and I can't back this up by statistics. I don't have them on me, and I didn't look into this, but my understanding is that more people than ever are tuning in and getting their news from independent sources,
No, it's true.
like podcasts and things like that. I hear Joe Rogan has more viewers than some of these entire large news networks.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Now, and
That's accurate. Yeah.
that can be scary in its own way, I suppose. But
Right.
I'm thinking more about people are actually waking up and realizing that the news that they were leaning on, that they were expecting to be promoted to them as accurate and fair and balanced, is not accurate, fair, or balanced at all on both
Yeah.
sides.
Oh, I miss the Walter Cronkite days, and most people here are too young to even know who that is. But he would come on the news, he would read the news, and that was it. There was no personal bias at all, and I miss those days. Yeah, I mean, personally, anecdotally, I haven't watched Fox News in about 4 years. I don't. It's not a saved thing on my browser. I don't have the channels. You can fact check that with my wife. She knows it. I go out of my way not to go to Fox News, CNN, certainly not MSNBC, and the big corporate media, because when you hear what they say and the spin they put on it, and then you actually do the research, you find out that there was an agenda, and it can only happen so many times before you go, no, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I get all of my news. I'm one of those people. I get all of my news from alternative sources.
And it's not just just doesn't stop at the politics either.
Oh, yeah.
Everything from the Weather Channel. I mean, how they deliver the weather, for goodness
Yeah.
sakes. I'm a Floridian. I've been in Florida for decades. And when I meet someone new, a new friend who's moved to Florida around this time of the year, September, is when we start hurricane season in Florida. And every
Mhm.
year, at least 2 or 3 hurricanes come ripping through the state.
Right.
For everybody who does not live in Florida, you guys would watch the news and think we're just getting demolished.
Right.
And the truth is we're at home watching TV and reruns, and that's it. As a matter of fact, and I'm not trying to be coy, I'm just giving it to you like Floridians give it to you. We don't even like pay attention unless it's at least a Category 3 hurricane.
Right. Yeah, you guys are playing golf unless it's a 4 or more. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe Texas.
Tropical storms, like whatever. Cat 1s, come on. Cat 2s, all right. Let's go make sure that we have foods, because all the crazies are going to wipe the shelves out thinking that something's crazy. Cat 3, now we're looking, at a Cat 3. And how many times, for any Floridians out there, or just, you don't have to be Floridian, in your state, whether your state gets hail damage or hurricanes or tornadoes, right?
Yep.
How many times have you watched the news and everyone else in the country thinks, my God, they're getting destroyed out there, and they're calling you saying, are you alive? And you're like, it's sunshine here.
Yep.
The weather's great, you know. I got a tan today. I remember seeing a guy on the news, and he was knee deep in water, and the wind was blowing.
Yep.
The wind was blowing. He's knee deep in water. He's leaning into the wind. It's blowing hard. This guy's in the middle of it, man. This poor guy's, you know, he's earning his paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, this is so-and-so from so-and-so news. You know, I'm in here in this category 4 hurricane. Behind him are 2 people walking the streets.
Yep.
Nonchalantly talking about their day. And everyone, the whole internet went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was standing in one of those divots. Trenches.
Yeah.
Help filter the water out. He was literally standing in that. He wasn't even on ground level. He's lying. He's manipulating.
Right. Down to the weather. The Weather Channel does this.
Right. And so, and that's my point, is we're not talking about politics here, where you can almost see why they would want you to think one way or hate the other person. We're talking about the effing weather.
Yeah. If it bleeds, it leaves. Right.
So, you know, when you're dealing with people and they have a mindset where they're dead set in their ways, it's going to be hard to change their mind because they've been lied to, manipulated, depending on what the topic is.
Right.
And so the first thing that I want to help kind of share with you guys that really helps when dealing with trying to change someone's mind is consider using Rappaport's rules. Okay.
Is that a new group? Is that a new band? Rapport?
No, that guy's long gone. But the quote, "You don't get it," is the most common ammunition used early on in war metaphor conversations.
Mm-hmm.
How much better would the world be if conversations go like, if you could just take that, take this craziness off the table while at the same time working with that person, building rapport, showing the other side that you're intellectually honest and fair.
Right.
You know, so early on, after they initially throw a punch of their reasoning at you, don't throw your position back at them. Instead, respond by following Rappaport's rules. And one of the first rule, number 1, is to attempt to re-express your target's positions so clearly, vividly, and fairly that your target actually tells you, thanks, I wish I had a thought of putting it that way. So you re-say back what you've heard from them in a very fair, honest, respectful way, and try to do it articulate. It will let the person know that A, and most importantly, you were listening. 2, you're not snapping and clapping back at them. And 3, they actually appreciated how nicely you actually repeated it back. Number 2, list any points of agreement that you two have, especially if they are not matters of general or widespread agreement. Like, don't just state the obvious. Like, hey, I noticed that both of us believe that the sky is blue and the earth is round. So we have that there. Like, right. don't ignore the obvious, right? So an example I should say is, let's say that we're talking about the right to bear arms, for instance.
Or armed bears.
And one person,
bears.
Yeah. And one person, you know, has one stance on this side and the other person has one stance on this side.
Mm-hmm.
You can, if the person who doesn't like the fact that we have the ability to, you know, defend ourselves, still thinks that you should be able to defend yourself with, you know, guns, we say.
Right.
but they still think that you should be able to defend yourself in some way, maybe a baseball bat or a taser. You might think that's ridiculous, like, well, what happens when two guys come in, you have one taser, like, and like resist the urge of clapping back and going, well, hey, dummy, that's not going to work, because if they come in with live rounds and you've got to, like, instead try to find common ground that you guys agree on. And it could be something along the lines of, well, even though we may not align 100% on this, it's nice to see that we both agree that protecting our family is our most important thing. We might disagree on how we want to do it, but we both are under the agreement that, defense of our family should happen. We just need to figure out, what's the correct, appropriate way to defend our family. And so it makes the conversation, they kind of lower their walls a little bit, they're not as defensive. Number 3, mention anything that you've learned from your target. If you can think of anything that you've learned from what they said, mention it. They'll appreciate it. And only then, if you do those 3 things, are you permitted to say so much as a word of rebuttal or criticism. So start there. I mean, how much more positively would you respond if someone did that for you?
Yeah, instead of being called stupid or you're dumb, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Whenever you're debating someone who has clearly different thought processes than you, have you ever had anyone do those 3 things to you? Have you ever had anyone, number 1, re-express your position in a very respectful, vivid, fair way, to where you go, you know what, I actually appreciate you saying those things? Have you ever had anyone list any points of agreement that the 2 of you had? Have you ever had anyone mention anything that they've learned from what you said, when you know that they are on the opposite side of that conversation? Have you personally ever had anyone do that?
No, nothing like that. It's usually, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, you're evil, you're a racist.
Right.
Our show about a month ago.
You're sexist, you're fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
But if they did, Dwayne, do you think that you would have a much higher chance of responding positively to them and in this debate if they started that way?
Well, I approach it a little different, because I'm trying to change minds on, depending on the topic. If I'm pretty far along on the Dunning-Kruger curve, and someone has an opposing position that they express, usually I don't start out by saying, if you believe in this or don't believe in that, you're wrong. Someone makes a comment and I'm like, oh, maybe you have new information I don't know about. And I go in there kind of questioning, trying to have a conversation. And then, I get the pushback. It's usually me doing the being nice and saying those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But as far as receiving, no, it's usually, you're an idiot, you're evil, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're not a masochist. I'm a, woman hater. I hate kids. I hate women. I'm all these things, that I supposedly am or do. And knowing that most people don't have that level of maturity to engage in conversation like that, I take the first few waves of the nonsense, and then, I keep trying to advance my position. If we figure out it's just a hopeless case, I thank you very much and move along my way. And as I get older, that time frame gets shorter, because I just don't. The way people have gotten so polarized nowadays, there's no conversation. It's getting harder and harder to have that conversation. Yeah. But one thing I did want to ask you, because this actually happened to me a few weeks ago. I'm not just the pissed off parent. I don't just do podcasts. I have a real life and a real full-time job and all that. Okay. But the industry that I'm in, and I'd love to hear your feedback here, but the industry that I'm in has a lot of people that lean the other way than I do. And I don't talk about my position on a number of things. Never get work done, have fun, and get the hell out of life. Anyway, with the recent politics that are coming up, I've had a few people, some are subordinates, some are equal, and some are superiors. And I've had it from all 3. I don't say forcefully, but really push their political position on me, and understanding the environment that I'm in, public opinion and all that fun stuff in corporate America, I've had to do the dance to get around it. One, not to give up my position. Two, not to be argumentative and lose my job or get passed over for promotion or whatever, having, because I work with these people and I rely on them, they rely on me. And then, but not give up, my position or agree with them just to move it along. But not say or do anything that's going to make them think differently of me. Because let's be real. Most people, if you say you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, they're not the same, they're immediately going to get a negative view of you. And I won't go into all the name calling back and forth, but how would you handle that? I know how I did, but I'd be curious to see how you would handle it. So your boss comes in and goes, "Hey, Jimmy, I can't believe what political candidate A did. What a moron."
Yeah. And I've had that happen many times. I will usually just try to instill doubt and not necessarily come out with my position, just help them try to understand a different way of saying it. And so if they said, "Hey, can you believe that so-and-so said this? What a complete moron." Then I would say, if I saw that interview, whatever, I would say, I actually saw that entire thing. And that wasn't what I took out of it. Did you listen to the entire thing, or did you just grab a clip out of it? And I'll instill doubt, because right before he said that, he actually was talking about this. And sometimes what I think happens is I think that people purposely will take little snippets out of what people say and try to make them, seem like a moron or whatever. And it's not that hard to do. I mean, I think that anyone can make me or you or anyone else sound really, really dumb. So just by chance, did you happen to catch like what was said before that? And then he'd be like, "Well, no, I didn't." So yeah, no, I get it. And just to be fair to the guy, he was actually talking about this, that, and the other. And then that's why he had said that, so, but it was a pretty interesting speech, the entire thing. So I'll say something like that. If they're really cramming it down your throat at your job, then I'm guessing that that they don't really care to express how their political side is viewed by anybody else. Are you afraid that if you express your political side, you would not get the same treatment as they are getting whenever they express theirs?
Decades of experience, yes. My political leanings are not favorable in the area that I work in, and it's been pretty much most of my career. And I mean, I'm thinking a week or a couple weeks ago, this person came in and was spouting a catchphrase, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's interesting," and let's move on about the day. Someone else that I know also has the same leanings I do quoted something back, and they had their little tussle, and we moved on.
Yeah.
Every
environment's a little different. Sometimes you might be in a situation where the opposition, for lack of better words, is so overwhelming that coming out and letting them know your side could actually hurt your career.
That's exactly where I'm at. Yeah, no, that's where I'm at. I mean, I've in my younger days, I've been called into HR for defending myself on a particular issue, and just a sidebar conversation. That person didn't like my answer because and no one was there to disagree with what I'm about to say, but they had no defense against the information I had, and it made them mad. Cognitive dissonance. They could either change their mind or do something to make themselves right. And their idea of making themselves right was to have me go to HR. This was about a decade and a half ago. And I've learned over the decades, obviously, to be wary about sharing personal positions on society matters, politics in general, things like that. And yeah, it's just interesting to hear how you would have handled a situation like that, because I'm sure it's come up in your professional life. Sentinel sounds like it has.
Yeah, it has, and depending on the situation will depend on whether or not I would be honest and let someone know what my political thoughts were, whether
Mhm.
I would how hard I would push, or whether I would just slip and dodge the way that you seem to be doing.
Yeah,
Um,
duck and move, duck and
yeah,
move.
you feel like Apollo Creed, just ducking and diving.
Oh yeah.
But the next one, number two, is actually going to be one that might be right up your alley, and
Mm,
might oppose what your direction usually is sometimes.
okay.
Okay, here's one. Let's see how open-minded our good buddy Dwayne actually is, because after you do number one, which is use Rappaport's rules, and
Hmm.
you what was number one? Attempt to re-express your target's position in a very clear and vivid and fair way, like a Dwayne. If you do a good job at listing any agreements that you guys have, if you mention anything that you've learned from them, and then number four was, only then are you able or permitted to actually begin some criticism of that. Well,
Okay.
okay, cool. So at this point, if you do everything right, you might be thinking, okay, so now it must be time to do this, this show. It's probably time now to kind of do this like I always do, which is kind of hit them with unquestionable facts and data, beyond
Guilty.
reproach, to show them the errors in their ways. That's where I'm going.
Guilty.
I was trying to find the right words of the way to say it, but you know, sadly, no. And here's why. Because
Okay.
listen, first of all, before I go on this road, it's I I do a lot of the same thing,
Mm,
but from the research that I've gathered, shooting someone with a whole bunch of facts doesn't always go well. And so number
right.
two on the list today is actually that facts are the enemy. And it sounds really weird to say.
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out too. But people aren't just going to hear our facts and suddenly have an aha moment.
Right.
Merely delivering info rarely changes people's mind. And you and I can contest to that. Well, I mean, those kind of things are for courtroom dramas on TV. You don't
Right.
really hear one statistic and then suddenly flip sides, and neither will they. So, in fact, what you kind of find sometimes is the opposite. Facts are like punches, to your earlier point.
Kryptonite.
Yeah, they usually cause the other side to put their hands up and block whatever you give them, just like you
Right.
pointed out earlier.
Hmm.
So again, you don't convince people. People convince themselves. And that's where I'm
Right.
going with this. And as far as studies go, there's actually been studies done as far back as the 1940s by Lewin, Lewin, I think it is. He showed lectures about why people should change their behaviors, and in these lectures, only amazing like 3% of the time, whenever shown data and facts, did
Oh.
people actually change their minds.
Mhm.
It was measly. It was like 3%. But when people self-generated reasons for the same activity, behavior changed. The behavior change occurred at 37%. People reject ideas they are given, and they act on ideas that they feel that they came up with themselves. And in the teachings we've done on these podcasts, I've said this before. If you tell someone what to do, they don't always do it. Moms, dads, have you ever been in a situation where you know what's right, and you let your children know, and they just don't freaking hear you?
Hmm. They know
And then
better.
they do it, and you bite your tongue to not say "I told you so." So
Oh, you're supposed to bite your tongue? Oh.
yeah, you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Um, so what's the answer then, right? I mean, it's going to hurt them some way,
Right.
financial hurt or emotional hurt, whatever you're trying to get your children to avoid in that situation. Well, the best way to get someone to change their mind is to make them think that it was their idea. Then they're bought
Yeah.
into it. And so that's what this guy, Kurt Lewin, was proving. When you give someone the stats, 3% of the time, you'll get a positive response that you want. But when people self-generate the reasons for themselves, the change occurs at 37. Still only a third. People are not going to be changing their minds en masse, but it's 10 times better than the first one.
Right.
People reject ideas that they're given, and they act on ideas that they feel that they came up with. Now, yes, longtime listeners of the podcast of Dwayne and I's, this is going to come across very ironic coming from a show that prides itself on presenting convincing facts and stats. Fair enough. But we don't just, I don't just want you to deliver facts. I want you to do more. The more effective strategy is actually to instill doubt and let them convince themselves. So how do we do that? Well, you use the unread library effect. So here's what that means. Question for you, Dwayne. How does your phone work? Yeah, I mean, you're a tech guy, right? I know it has to do with computers and radio waves. But how do computers and radio waves work? Unless you have a degree in electrical engineering, there's really only one honest answer here. And that is, you're not really sure. Unless you actually do know. I mean, how you actually know
how far down do you want to get into the OS? I mean, yeah, I mean, the 7-layer effect. I can, break all that down and how radio waves work and satellite and all that. I mean, how far do you want to go?
And for a guy like you might be able to answer that question. For the vast majority of us, we don't know how this stuff works.
It's magic,
right? I mean, please explain electricity to me.
Right.
The closest most people will be able to get is it's that magic zappy stuff that makes things go,
Right.
It's like the knowledge we have is a bunch of borrowed books from trustworthy libraries, books that we've never bothered to read. Mm-hmm. We're all a lot more certain about most of what we know than we have any right to be. And that means how we know what we know and why we believe what we believe are actually far more fragile than we think. And instill far more doubt than debating the accuracy of the facts themselves. Does that make sense?
You're describing the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Right. Leveraging this unread library effect means that you encourage the other person to talk, and by politely asking them questions, allow them to see their own ignorance. Instead of you battering them with facts, they lead themselves into doubt. Socrates will be proud.
Right.
At the very least, it often serves to moderate extreme beliefs because it's very humbling to realize that you really can't explain what your beliefs are.
Right.
And it reduces hostility because you don't have to throw those backfiring facts at them. You just simply ask sincere questions.
The Columbo tactic.
The what now?
Are you familiar with the Columbo tactic?
From that show, Columbo?
Yeah. I've done a little studying in the Columbo arena. And it's called the Columbo tactic from the show, where he basically peppers people with questions, and they answer. They either get to that point they don't know, or they creates the doubt or whatever. But you ask questions, open-ended usually, questions to them, and again, it's called the Columbo tactic.
Yeah. It's a pretty solid show too, and he's very he's not a very intimidating, statured man.
Right.
He seems dumb actually, but he's brilliant.
That's why it works.
And he always walks away going, "Oh, okay, thanks," and he'll take 2 steps to the door and then stop and go, and then he'll turn around and ask a question and instill that doubt.
Right.
So invite explanations, ask for specifics, follow up with pointed questions that revolve around soliciting how someone knows the details, and then continue to openly admit your own ignorance. In many conversations, the more ignorant you admit, the more readily your partner in the conversation will step in with an explanation to help you understand. And the more they attempt to explain, the more likely they are to realize the limits of their own knowledge. This strategy not only helps moderate strong views, it models openness, willingness to admit ignorance, and readiness to revise beliefs. For example, partisans on both sides of the aisle support many government policies that they barely understand.
Right.
Has this policy actually been shown to work before? What are the variable alternatives? How much would it cost? What are the potential downsides? How would it be rolled out? Most people go on instinct, not evidence. But this doesn't stop them from still being shrill and strident. The unread library effect can help people moderate their views, but in the current conversational war zone, extreme statements are often too common. And people take positions that are so far off the wall that it's Herculean to find any sort of common ground. And this turns into an endless back and forth of yes, it is, or no, it isn't. So this right here, this is the Dunn-Kruger effect, right?
Yep, this is it.
I'll go ahead and explain that for those who...
Well, yeah, you have your X and Y confidence up, and then your knowledge. And this is usually, you want to think of this in a way as length of time. So everyone, starts here. And what happens is you learn a little bit about a topic, whatever that is. And then for some reason you think that it says here you're ignorant, but you think you're intelligent, you know the issue, a bill being put through, or a particular societal issue, whatever, you've watched a couple episodes of whatever, and you think you're an expert. And then over time, hopefully, you realize that you're kind of dumb. And I'm playing playful with the language here, but you realize that you just don't know anything, or don't know near as much as you thought you did up here, but you have supreme confidence. But then you get down here, your knowledge is getting better, but you're less confident because you're learning more and more about it. And then hopefully, over time, you get more and more, now you'll never be at the top, and you'll never be really at where you thought you were back then. But you get better, but you realize how dumb you are. For anyone that's into martial arts, an easy example, and I'll use a traditional, white is you're the beginner, and then black, first degree black belt, you're a expert. And everyone thinks that the black belts are they know everything, and it's done, they're Bruce Lee, whatever. Well, what happens is you got your white belt, you don't know anything, and then you get your yellow belt and your orange belt. And I know different martial arts studios will do it different. Let's just say the first few belts. You get to your orange belt, you think you're Bruce Lee at that point. You could walk into wherever and kick everybody's ass, and it's a done deal. And then as you continue on, if you continue on, you get down to your brown belts, and then to your first degree black belt. And most black belts, when they get their first degree, will realize just how much they don't know about martial arts. That's pretty well a Dunning-Kruger, an example of that. You think early on, you're overconfident. You think you know everything about a topic, until when you dive in further, you realize you just don't know as much as you did. And you get a little more willing to admit it. And then over time, you do get more knowledge that's solid, and you can express it, and then you meet other people. Then you have that, and you have the cognitive dissonance. This is the resolution. It's a little bit different of the just cognitive dissonance, but that's basically, and I think I had an easy example for a lot of us on this page, talking about the belief, and we'll use smoking. Smoking is unhealthy. A person smoking, they are told that it's unhealthy. They can do a few things. They can, like what I did when I smoked. Well, I know people, George Burns lived to 100 and he smoked every day and nothing ever happened to him. Right. Well, we have all this evidence. Whatever. And then over time, I started doing more and more research going, this smoking thing is not the coolest thing. And then I eventually changed my belief on the topic of smoking, that it's actually not good. And it took time to do that. people threw all kinds of facts at me. It's obviously it's all out there, but I held on to George Burns smoked a cigar every day of his life, and my uncle Joe, third once removed, he lived 100 smoking every single day, no problem, I'll be fine. Well, we know that that's not generally data, statistics, and all that shows that's not what happens.
Right.
But these are two of the big ones in the area that you were talking about, cognitive dissonance and the Dunning-Kruger effect.
If everyone's taking something away from the show, if you guys don't mind, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the show, to the channel. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So if you guys haven't already done so, it would be great if you guys could. The fourth thing we want to talk about on how to change people's minds. Number 4 is to use scales. Now, use numerical scales to draw comparisons and bring people back to reality. Let me give an example. If they say the government is tyrannical, then you say, okay, well, that's true. No.
Okay.
Okay. And
I don't know what to do with my hands.
So you would say in return, okay, if Stalin's Russia was a 9 out of 10 in government type tyranny, where's our country right now?
Oh, yeah.
And then if the other person at least falls into the category of borderline sane and may go on to live a semi-normal life, they'll back off a little bit and gain some perspective. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily wrong, but you're providing context that will be a better ground than their sometimes extreme beliefs. You can also leverage scales to learn their pre-existing doubts as well, which you can later add fuel
or bias.
Yeah, exactly. So if you say on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being no confidence and 10 being absolute confident, how confident are you that your belief is true? They say, I'm an 8. Then you say, cool. Out of curiosity, why didn't you say 9? Now they'll start making a case against their own beliefs, a case that they find at least somewhat compelling. Smile, because they're handing you the treasure map. Now you know how to go about this.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up another great scale that we've talked about, I don't know how many times, which is the scale. You already know where I'm going. Yeah. The 1 to 10 scale on how hot are you as compared to other women or as compared to other men, depending upon which scale we're looking at.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty easy, low-hanging fruit thing to talk about.
Science is still out on research on how to deal with those delusional women. There's no getting to them. but so what's the single most powerful method for getting people to give the other side an honest and fair look? Is this one. Here we go. Use disconfirmation. And what that means is asking them a variation on, under what conditions could your belief be false?
Okay.
Reasonable, intellectually honest people, all 2 of them that are left on the entire planet, will concede that they could be wrong. And they will respond with a solid hint as to what angle might convince them. So ask questions that could clarify specific conditions under which they might reconsider their stance. So you might say something like, well, okay, so if the results of that study you're referencing couldn't be replicated, then you'd be open to changing your mind. But of course, not everyone's going to play fair. If they can reply, absolutely, nothing would ever convince me that I'm wrong. Okay. But now what they're saying is that their position is absolute truth, which for the vast majority of issues is like saying, I hereby publicly admit to being an obsessed zealot. So to qualify for a sanity membership card, many will respond with something, but something that is wildly implausible. Like, if you can bring back person A from the dead to say he was wrong about B, then I'd stop believing. How about that? Well, okay, fine. Well, that's going to be frustrating, right? But it's also a tactic admission that they know the evidence doesn't justify their belief. They're just basically admitting to being insecure there. So if you want to keep pursuing the point, you can address the issue of why the bar is so uniquely high for this topic and ask a question regarding a more reasonable challenge. Like, hey, I'm having trouble understanding. Do you use that reasoning process for anything else or just X? Like, why do you think your standard for disconfirmation for this is so much higher than it is for other things? I'm just wondering why some simpler issue, like why after all this time a dead Bigfoot have never been found, isn't good enough to cast doubt on your belief in Sasquatch. So if you've done a good job with rapport, all the above mentions will get you pretty far with most people. It's not going to be a guarantee. Some will just staunchly say that nothing will change their minds. Others, no matter how polite or diplomatic you are, guys, will claim to be morally offended by a question. To Dwayne's point, you're a bigot, anarchist, sexist, whatever. And that allows them to relieve the cognitive dissonance by changing the subject. So, with that being said, let's say you're dealing with one of those people. What do you do when you're dealing with the most extreme extremist? If you thought facts were useless before, they're undoubtedly useless here. The most stubbornly held beliefs are often the ones that have nothing to do with the truth. They don't even know which subway stop the truth is even on. They're all about values and identity. And you know what neuroscience research says happens in people's brains when you change their identity beliefs? One interpretation of these activations in the context of our study is that these structures are signaling threats to deeply held beliefs the same way that they might signal threats to physical safety. That's what they think. They're so defendant or defensive on their ideology and their beliefs that they start to be triggered in thinking that they're actually, it's almost similar like a physical threat. So when you see these extremists and they get flipped out over the fact that, you've got them to start to, believe or make sense, they just lose their shit. Because it's an attack on their identity. As far as brainwashed is concerned, you might as well be brandishing an axe when you question Uncle Fred's politics at the holiday dinner table. So you have to tread lightly because people can get really spun up.
Well, on kind of on that topic, the Pissed Off Parent Show dropped an episode yesterday, and I have a segment in there called Facebook Moron of the Week. Again, my show's a little more cheekier than the Dad Talk Today counterpart, and I have a little bit more fun with it. And kind of what you're getting at is, people not wanting to change their mind because they have been guilty of doing, what the statement is. If people in this community, if they had an ex-partner steal their kids, file for divorce, do the silver bullet, whatever that is. And then, they would see a meme or information that shows that the person that does that is a bad person. They will then get their cackles up and start going nuts. They'll say, well, not all women are like that, or that's not me, or, there's just so many different situations. But the main point is that if they're guilty of the behavior, they can't think of themselves as a bad person. So they've got to then, well, it's okay. On a topic that we kind of brought up a little bit earlier on the the deletion of a small child. I had one position, this other person had another position, and I'm doing my facts, data, figures, information. Well, it turns out this person did do that when they were much younger, and they then would have to, that cognitive dissonance, they would have to reconcile the fact that they did something bad based on my evidence, and they just mentally couldn't assent to that, so they had to come up with all the other triggers and stuff like that. And I made it as nice as I could. I wasn't saying you're a bad person and there's still, you know, I'm saying there's still hope for you. This, you know, hey, it happened, now it's just time to grow from it, and trying to be encouraging there. And there was just so much damage, because that issue was a damaging thing for this person. But you have people that they're guilty or they've done those things, and the reason they hold to a position is because they've done it, and they'll never. It takes a lot to change your mind. That's why we make a big deal out of that lady, actually here in Texas. I won't name her name, but she used to alienate her kids from the dad, and she was card carrying, you know, blah 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 blah, and then she had an epiphany, and then came out and said, you know what, I was wrong. And it was such a big deal, because it is rare, because they usually don't. But she was a person that cognitive dissonance got to the point where she says, I got to change my position on this. I've been shown other evidence. This is probably happening to her kids now that they're older. But, you know, the people that had been talking with her didn't, you know, jump on her and tell her she's an idiot or she's a moron or you're wrong. You know, they loved her. They, you know, continued working with her, welcomed her with open arms, and allowed her a safe space to change her mind.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do. I'll be the first to admit it.
It is. So when you're dealing with these extreme people, with these extreme ideologies, thoughts, sometimes whenever you are doing all the right things, they're just so wrapped up in their beliefs, because their beliefs is their identity.
Right.
So when you're dealing with this type of person, try to change the subject from the accuracy of their beliefs to how they know their beliefs are true and how their beliefs contribute to their sense of personal identity. Don't dispute whether Bigfoot is real. Question how they know Bigfoot is real. Just say, these beliefs seem really important. They are
Bigfoot
clearly important to you. What are you basing them on? Induce doubt by addressing whether their reasoning process is in line with their conclusions. Using disconfirmation questions related to morality and their vision of a good person. Say, would you be a good person if you didn't hold this belief? Who are some examples of people that don't hold that belief that are good people? It's not a kill shot. Again, a eureka, a moment. It's going to be unrealistic. You can nicely expose contradictions in their reasoning and diplomatically loosen the connection between their big picture values, which you might agree with, and their specific beliefs, which you most certainly don't. But how they reconcile all this is, in the end, up to them. So, that being said, let's go ahead and sum up all of this so far. Okay. This is how you change people's minds. You be a partner, not an adversary. If you're trying to win, you're going to lose. The best approach is to be respectful. Listen, understand, instill doubt. Use Rappaport's rules. They can seem awkward, but they reduce conflict better than Valium. Facts are the enemy. Unless we're talking about the savvy, attractive people who watch this awesome podcast here, then yes, facts are the enemy. Use the unread library effect. Let them talk. Ask questions. Let them expose their ignorance. Don't cheer when it happens. Use scales. Bring extreme statements down to earth when numbered comparisons. And unless they have a certain level 10 thought process, they'll mention their own doubts. And then use disconfirmation. Hey, Eric, Dwayne, whatever, under what circumstances would disconfirmation not be effective? Theorist beliefs are about values. They're about identity. Mm-hmm. Don't attack what they believe. Focus on the validity of their reasoning process and whether that identity is the only way to be a good person. If absolutely nothing else works, then they might just be totally unreasonable. They might be completely unreachable. Or it could be that you're the zealot and you're unwilling to give any serious consideration to the possibility. Then that, my friend, is a big red flag, because no one thinks that they're the problem. And that's the problem. After all,
Well, the old saying is when you're pointing your finger, there's three pointing back at you.
Yeah. I mean, be open to the idea that you could be the problem. I mean, after all, you guys are the one listening to a podcast about how to change people's minds. So it's just a possibility to consider. But if you're serious about having fewer arguments, fewer fights to the death, then it's a good idea to make sure you're really a victim, not a patient. So what you do is important. And what do you do if you think that you might be the problem? Well, you consider the beliefs that you actually argue about. Now ask yourself disconfirmation questions. Write down the answers. Show them to a friend who has a different perspective.
Yeah.
Does your pal feel these responses pass the implausibility sniff test? If you have zero friends with different perspectives, then that's not a good sign either. And if you tend to consider anyone with opposite views to be a morally repugnant subhuman pigman, well, then I think you have the answer to whether or not you're an ideologue. Changing other people's minds is extremely hard. Changing your own can be even harder. So hopefully you guys can take away some nuggets today. Hopefully that helps. Those are some of the best tactics that I can think of that has helped me have success when trying to change the minds of people who just don't want their minds changed. Dwayne, did you have anything that you want to add before we go to final thoughts?
Not for this part. I did want to comment that Eric Carroll's book is officially, as of yesterday, on sale. And you can see I've already bought mine. I'll be getting mine Monday. It's And Justice for Dads, go Metallica, that Eric Carroll has written. We talked about it on an earlier show this week. It's chock full of, data and information. Maybe you want to use it, maybe you don't, whatever. Stories and other information, but it is available now on Amazon or your other bookstores. This is just the one that I use. And again, it's the Kindle versions, I think $10. The soft copy or the soft cover is $16, and then I think the hardcover is $25. And Eric may be doing something later in the road for autographed copies or something that's on him. But I just wanted to let the community know that the book is out, it's official, and this is yet another way to get yourself educated, learn how to fight the system. And of course, help out Dad Talk Today. This is just another way to do that. And again, big round of applause for Eric and all the work he's done on getting this book to see the light of day.
Yeah, he worked really hard on it.
So yeah, if you go into your Amazon browser, I just sounded old when I said that. When you go into Amazon on the app or on the using the computer, type in And Justice for Dads or Eric Carroll, and either one of those should pull it up. But I'll be getting mine Monday. He did ask, after you had a chance to read it, offer a response or a review of it. Keep it, nice and good, if you could. And wanted to wish Eric good job and success in the book. Actually, it was already it's a new release, but it actually had the #1 pre-release pre-orders. I mean, apparently a number of people have already ordered it even before it became available, hence the pre-ordering. But I just would urge and ask everyone to go ahead and do that. And someone already made the comment, Master of Puppets. Actually, that was off the Master of Puppets album. This would be the And Justice for All. So you got one And Justice for All. Leper Messiah. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. But anyway, let me kick that one off. But yeah, that's all I had. And as far as the show, the good points to make, in the arena that we're in, we're usually dealing with a hostile court system, friends, family, you name it, and on these particular topics. These are good ideas to use then. I mean, when you go, and I've always asked, out in the public square, that's where we're going to get change made, is out in the public square. Is when that person gets on there and says men don't deserve their kids, or child support to be the way it is, whatever that issue is, this is where you can learn the facts, get in there and make the best argument and try to win people over, change people's minds. Because right now, people think they're deadbeat dads. Actually, on the Pissed Off Parent show, I had the myth segment that talked about who owes more child support, men or women. Had a poll and went through all that stuff. But learning the facts is part of the battle. Two, being winsome and being nice when you're dealing with people. That's what's going to convince them to change their mind, and that's the only way it's going to work. You're never going to tell them you're stupid because of X and change your mind. That'll never happen.
Well, hopefully those tips and tactics helped.
Yeah.
Let's go to final thoughts.
Yep.
So here's the thing, whether it's politics, personal beliefs, or just trying to convince your buddy to finally watch that show you recommended to him 6 years ago, changing someone's mind is one of the hardest things that we can try to do. But let's not forget, it's not about winning or proving we're right. What today's lesson really taught us is that kindness and patience, understanding, go a lot farther than facts ever will alone. If you come at someone like you're storming the castle, don't be surprised when they raise the drawbridge and load the cannons. People respond to empathy, not aggression. And as much as we'd like to think we can change someone with a really good, witty, well-placed argument, it's rarely ever that simple. Changing someone's mind doesn't mean you win the conversation. It means that you've opened the door to understanding, and that's the true victory. As we learned today, kindness isn't just the best approach. It's the most effective approach. Just asking the right questions can lead to real change, the kind that comes from within. So, as you head out into the world, ready to tackle those tough conversations with people like your friends or family, or even that guy on Facebook who swears the earth is flat, keep these tools in your back pocket. Be curious, be patient. Listen more than you're talking. Most importantly, be willing to have your own mind changed as well. Because the world doesn't need any more shouting. What it really needs is more listening and more understanding and a lot more humility. That's all the wisdom for today, folks. Until next time, remember, changing minds starts with changing how we approach a conversation. Stay kind, stay curious, and above all, stay human. Thanks for tuning into The Big Show. Dwayne and I will see you back here next Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on the next episode of The Big Show. Take care.